I loved the outdoors, and so we were having great fun up in the Adirondacks. We were fishing, water skiing, but we also had what's called a lake toy. My brother-in-law was spinning us around. We were laughing, fell off into the water, got back on the boat, and went back out. So everything was normal until we heard my brother-in-law yell, "Get off the boat. The boat is sinking." I looked down, and the tow rope was wrapped around my leg. My brother-in-law couldn't see me because the boat was in the way. I heard the engine start, and I thought, oh, this is gonna hurt. Next thing I knew, I was being dragged underwater. I was swallowing water the whole time. I knew I was going to die. As I was thinking that, I separated from my body and immediately went through this saran-wrapped kind of veil. It was like, oh my God. I knew I was in eternity. I grew up in Western New York, one of 7 children, and lived a pretty normal suburban life. I didn't have a lot of close friends until I started playing sports in high school and realized, oh, this social thing can be kind of fun. I discovered I could be part of a team. I had some athletic abilities and went down to Texas to play basketball at Wayland Baptist, but I also wanted to ensure I would be employed. I saw the discrimination against women in lots of different arenas, so I thought, well, I'm going to need a double major, maybe 2 master's degrees. I didn't know what I would need to be employed. After college, I started working and going to school for my master's. I have a master's degree in physical education and a master's degree in oriental medicine and acupuncture. I ended up in Phoenix, got hired in the community college system, and was a professor for the last 30 years. I retired in 2015. I loved the outdoors. We grew up in Ontario, and my brother-in-law's company had cabins up in the Adirondacks. You'd pick 2 weeks during the summer, and your family got to have the cabin. It was our week to have the cabin, and it was always great fun. We were fishing, water skiing, but we also had this lake toy, an inflatable raft with pontoons that could be dragged around the lake if you didn't want to water ski. We'd been doing that for several years, and this was a regular, normal year in 1998. We'd been out early morning fishing and wanted to get out on the lake toy before lunch. The people on the boat were my brother-in-law, his nephew's baby, my older sister, and me. My sister and I were going to get on the inflatable lake toy. The lake toy was being towed by a tow rope, and my brother-in-law was spinning us around. We were laughing, fell off into the water, got back on the boat, and went back out. Everything was normal, my life was normal, what I was doing was normal, until it wasn't. The boat had a device they torque-wrenched into the bottom so water could never come on board. It was impossible. We had just dumped off, got back on the boat, and my sister was behind me on the raft. As we were being pulled out, my sister was letting out the rope. We were let out to about here when we heard my brother-in-law yell, "Get off the boat. The boat is sinking. The boat's sinking. That's impossible." But I looked behind me, and my sister threw the tow rope to the left. Tow ropes are nylon, they don't sink, they float on the water. We had our life jackets on, and I looked over as we were going into the water to the right. It was like, boom, boom, we were in the water. The inflatable toy was in front of me, my sister was behind me, and I looked down. The tow rope was wrapped around my leg. I said, "That's impossible. There's no way this rope can be." I wondered if it was an optical illusion. Was it really around my leg? My brother-in-law couldn't see me because the boat was in the way. I heard the engine start, a twin-powered engine, a lot of power in that boat, and I thought, oh, this is gonna hurt. He took off, and the tow rope headed out with the boat, strangling my leg to the bone. There was an explosion of pain in my head. I thought, oh my God, this is really hurting. Next thing I knew, I was being dragged underwater. It was the boat, the raft, myself, and my sister back there. She said, I was watching my husband kill my sister, because she knew they were turned toward the shore, focused on getting the boat in before it sank, with a baby on board. I was being drowned. The power of the water was hitting my chest, my air bubbles were going out, and I was thinking, I really could use the air. I really could use that. Then, oh my God, because all that college education, and I couldn't get out of this. I immediately started taking in water because of the power of the boat. I was swallowing water the whole time. I knew I was going to die. There wasn't peace in it, but there was no sense in being angry. It just was. There was a knowing that there was nothing I could do. Since I was hanging out, I thought, well, where are they going to have the funeral? In Arizona? In New York? How are they going to do this? As I was thinking that, I separated from my body and immediately went through this saran-wrapped kind of veil. It was very thin, but it was something there. As I popped through, I thought, oh, I'm dead. Oh, I brought my consciousness with me. Wow, that's pretty cool. Then it was like, oh my God, there's a difference between time and no time. I knew I was in eternity. My body started vibrating, and it was like each cell, trillions of cells, looked like a happy face. They were giggling, everything was funny. I looked down and thought, what are you guys doing? I heard the cells in my body saying, he's coming, he's coming, he's coming. I was like, who's coming? As I looked up in slow motion, if this was the earth, I could feel something coming up. As it approached, I thought, oh my God, it's the creator of the universe. Oh my God. I said to my cells, I know why you were excited. This is so exciting. And boom, I was face to face with the creator of the universe. He didn't have a face, no pronoun. It wasn't a he, a she, or an it. It was the creator of the universe. All I can describe it as was like the aurora borealis, wavy, different colors, an electric being. I experienced telepathy for the first time. It was like when you go to a drive-through bank, put your money in that tube, and it shoots out. It was a tube of knowledge sent into my brain, and when it got there, it unpacked. I thought, oh my God, this is really kind of cool. As I had a thought, the creator of the universe had the exact same thought. I thought, the creator of the universe, and I heard back, I am the creator of the universe. I thought, oh my God, you know everything, and I heard, I know everything. It was this beautiful conversation. I knew I was in front of the creator of the universe. I started seeing the expanse of what it really means to be eternal. People talk about multidimensional, and it was like, oh my God, this is just so amazing. I started looking back to Earth, thinking, I hope they're going to be okay with me being dead and drowned. As I was looking back, I heard this telepathic being, not God, say, don't worry. As soon as I heard that and turned back, everything on Earth disappeared. All 3D people I knew, their existence no longer occurred to me because I was so focused on the present moment of what was happening here. I said, you know everything, and heard, I know everything. Then God said to me, I even know the number of grains of sand on a beach in New Zealand. Why would God say that of all things? Next thing I knew, I was rocketed down to New Zealand on a beach. My eye was right up against a grain, and I immediately knew how many grains of sand were on that beach. Then I rocketed back up in front of God, amazed. He said, I even know the number of hairs on your head. I was getting information through this telepathy through my head. Then, all of a sudden, the concept of love became palpable and was shooting through my body. I didn't have a body, but it felt like I did. I thought, oh, now I know bliss, love, and bliss. The creator of the universe called me by my name, not Donna, but a name God knew me as through the millennia, however long that is. I was in this space I never wanted to leave. I was moving through the universe, getting knowledge about how this works, how that works, thinking, this is so cool. We came to a stop, and I heard God say, so, Donna, what would you like to do here? I never thought I would say this in a million years. You might think, when I die, I'm going to ask God this or that. That didn't happen. I looked at God and said, well, God, since you made me, I give the choice to you. As soon as that happened, I immediately realized what I had just done. I gave away my choice. Some people might say, no, that was your choice. No, I gave away knowing what was going to happen next. I thought, oh, I just swore in front of God. I said, oh no, I'm sorry. As I was waiting for God to answer, I heard this, I don't know what being, but it was like, when you go back, you will tell people how important choice is in their lives. Here's what choice means, it doesn't mean what you're having for dinner. It means every moment of your life, you are making choices in your thinking, how you think about people, how you think about a story someone tells you, something that goes against your belief system, and you think, I don't really believe that. Even if you don't say it, that's a choice. How precious choice is to human beings. We talk about free will, but this was more than that. Every moment is a choice. A lot of times, people think if they're sitting in a coffee shop and see someone, they have thoughts like, oh, look at that person, their coat doesn't match their shoes. You think just because you don't say it, it doesn't have an impact, but that's not true. There's an energy associated with that. I don't know how to explain it, but energy looks so different to me now. So, I was getting this lesson in surrender and choice while waiting. I felt unhinged, like I was falling back to earth. I heard, good answer, as I was falling back. I landed inside my body, snapped back in, and realized my lungs were full of water. I thought, what's going to happen here? What just happened? What happened was my brother-in-law was driving the boat and felt a hand on his shoulder. No one was there. He turned around, thinking, what? But it made him stop the boat. He saw the raft acting funny because I was on the end. I thought, oh, I'm alive, and started swimming to the surface. I put my hands up, felt human hands under my armpits, and thought it was my sister. I looked down at the rope, thinking, there's no way they're getting this rope out of my leg. As soon as I said that, the rope came undone. I got to the top, no one was there. I felt pounding on my back, and gallons of water came out. My sister must have looked like Superwoman swimming across the lake to get to me. I looked down at my leg and thought, oh my God, it's in half. I was holding on to my leg as my sister swam up, yelling, don't look at my leg. Don't look at my leg. What did she do? She looked at my leg and started screaming. I started telling her, okay, Cindy, I'm going into shock, so here's what you do, make sure my legs are up here, grab onto my leg, and do all this. My brother-in-law got another boat, but he wasn't in a hurry because he didn't know what happened out on the lake. When he came out with the other boat, I said, don't look at my leg. He looked at my leg, tried to get in the water to get me on the boat, and I said, no, if you get me on the boat, my leg will fall off. Just drag me back in. That's what we did. We got back to the dock, and the ambulance came. Even in the ambulance, they started giving me electrolytes and treating me. The lake was full of giardia, so I had swallowed all of that. At the hospital, they were concerned about the swelling in my leg and the amount of water I took in. They gave me antibiotics and pain pills. I was only in the emergency room, they didn't keep me overnight. They basically said, "Go back to your cabin." My brother-in-law drove us back to the cabin, and we just iced it and used antibiotics. That's all they told me. The whole thing is miraculous. The boat sinking when water can't get on it, the tow rope that isn't supposed to sink but didn't float, how it ripped into my leg, how it got out of my leg, a series of impossible things. I spent a lot of time wondering, how did that happen? How did I get there? The first year, I only told my circle of friends. I didn't even tell my family members. I didn't know what really happened. I didn't know there was such a thing as a near-death experience, NDE. I didn't know what NDE meant, that there were NDE groups, or that there was anybody I could talk to about it. So, I just kept talking to the other side. I would set an intention before I went to bed, saying, "I have some questions about what's going down here." The first 6 months were just dealing with the wound itself. I had no feeling in my calf or toes and would drag my leg around, which wasn't good as a teacher. I'm used to walking around my classroom, but I had to sit there because I didn't want my students to see me drag my leg. I have an acupuncture clinic, so after teaching, I go there. There's a bank nearby where I make my daily deposit. I had written out how I wanted it taken care of for my business. I went into the bank. It was quiet, with a line behind me. I shoved a piece of paper to the teller. As my nerves started to regenerate, it was an explosion of pain. You can't not yell, no matter what you do. As I was handing over the paper, I yelled, "Ah!" The teller thought I was robbing the bank and yelled, "Ah!" Because we both yelled, everyone in the bank got down on the ground or grabbed their cell phones to call the police. I was saying, "No, no, no, it's just my leg." I tried to pull up my pants to show the bandages, and the teller said, "No, I'm not robbing the bank." I had to explain to the police. That was the new normal, being careful where I went because you can't predict nerve pain. That was 6 months of the wound and another 6 months figuring out how to deal with my life. There have been lots of physical things I've had to deal with since the NDE. Years later, someone told me about IANDS, the International Association for Near-Death Studies, and the Monroe Institute, where you can talk to people. When they asked me what it was like, I said, "Here's how I feel about it, it was a designer death." We each get a designer death because God knows you so well, to the nth degree. It blew up my whole belief system, what I was taught, what I grew up with, and what I saw. It took me years to assimilate that spirituality. If someone said, "This is how God works," that's not what I saw or heard. It changed my life, everything I think about, every moment. I've loved deeply here. I know what that love is, and it's the most powerful force on earth. The love over there is a pure love. It doesn't mean you can't have pure love here, but it's very difficult. The love of a husband, wife, child, or seeing the birth of your child, you think it's such bliss, that it can't get better. It's 100 times better. I think it's a love I can't explain, but you would have to experience it. I didn't expect that. To all the people watching who think it's a product of your brain, how do you explain that? Because I know love here, and I know love there. Every cell, every part of you that makes you who you are, is bathed in this pure bliss of safety, security, and love. You never want to leave. This is why some people, when given the choice, say, "I'm not coming back." If you listen to near-death stories, some say, "I was given a choice, and there's no way I'm going back. Life here is hard. This isn't heaven, it's a working planet." You have to come to a belief system to assimilate that. How do you assimilate suffering here? Some call it a school, a hospital, a working planet, whatever you call it, this is not that. What you bring there is what you're able to work through in your own heart. You bring the essence of your heart and love there. If I had advice, it would be to be aware of every moment, if you can. I don't think that's possible for most people. Most people have an 8-track brain, 8 things going on, a grocery list, resolving an issue, decisions to make. I saw that with my students, living an 8-track life. It's very difficult to get down to the present moment. So, it becomes about awareness first. You have to be aware of where you are in your spiritual life, your belief system, your goals. The second thing would be a search for what you think is the truth. Some people search and think the truth is in Catholicism, Judaism, Christianity, Hinduism, wherever you land. Over time, does it serve you? You begin to assimilate other information. We're on this education journey, life journey, work journey. Try not to get caught up in doing so much. I tell people, you're a human being, not a human doing. Take a deep breath, work through this. Can you look at it a different way? Is there anything I can say to change your perspective 1 degree? That's what I'm here for. Can I change your perspective 1 degree and let that bubble up inside you? Be aware of the possibilities. Are you aware that you could have angels? Some say, no, no, no. Are you aware of the possibility of an afterlife? Some say, no, there's no afterlife, you're making it up. But if I can say, can you set aside your belief for a moment, listen to what I have to say, be open to these possibilities? Then you can pick up your old belief system or begin to assimilate. There's nothing I'm going to say to convince you of an afterlife. This was my experience of the afterlife, my designer death. It wasn't what I thought it was going to be, and it radically changed my entire life. I wanted to make sure I was living a full life. I brought laptops to Chiapas for Mayan students, humanitarian aid to war-torn areas of Croatia. I was in China studying during the 2008 earthquake and did some work there. I've been a humanitarian, a poet, a writer. It wasn't so much human doing as experiencing the planet. People asked me about that, and every single person said, I'm waiting until I retire, until the kids are out of the house, for this check to come in. Don't wait. I get that you can't just drop everything, but you should never say to yourself, I'm going to wait. I have a podcast, I'm learning to metalsmith, making jewelry, because I want to experience this. None of that's on the other side. That's here. So, I set up my house with a podcast room, a music room, different rooms to enjoy this.